Chris Cowlin. Fan cams. Club news. Transfer news. Match previews. Legend interviews. Spurs winning. Press conferences. Covering everything Tottenham and England.
Welcome back to the channel and welcome back to another edition of the Spurs Chat Podcast. This is another edition of the viewers' comments and questions. I absolutely love these episodes. They have been very popular so far, so please do get involved with us this evening. We're live on YouTube, on X and on Facebook. Please do give us any questions and your comments. Let us know how you are feeling right now as a Tottenham Hotspur fan. Let us know what you are expecting in the next 26 days or so in this transfer window. What does Spurs need to do? I think that is a very obvious question. Will Tottenham Hotspur get the players for Ange Postecoglou before the 30th of August? That is the big question. Joining me this evening is channel regular and broadcast journalist with the Daily Mail, Josh Hughes. Josh, how are you?
I'm doing a lot better than I was yesterday. I think it turned into one of those classic kind of, I know it's just pre-season, but we're all getting a little bit touchy and a bit fed up with the transfer window and just hoping that something happens quite quickly with the sort of days down to the start of the season.
Josh, as I said to you off air, there's no script this evening, no skeleton script either. It is all about what the viewers and the listeners want to know, what they want to talk about. Let's start straight away with Osborne 2. Josh, I think I've got you half here as a Spurs fan, and I think I've got you half here as a Daily Mail journalist. Now, I think that we'll go down the journalist route first. Please give us some good news.
The news is what everyone has already seen. It's the fact that Tottenham want to buy a striker and potentially are open to one more attacking player. I know there was a bit of sort of thinking at the start of the window. People like Fabrizio Romano, for example, tweeting that Tottenham are looking for one more attacking player. So that's the idea. Well, I think all the signs seem to be pointing at the fact that that attacking player is a striker, but that Spurs are very much open to doing another attacking deal. And I hate this word because it is, if there was one word to describe Tottenham in a transfer market, it's this one, the O word, opportunities. If an opportunity presents itself, a player becomes available at a price that, because let's face it, Spurs aren't going to go. I would be stunned if Spurs went and blew all their sort of traditions in the market out the window and started acting, like the real big boys and spending big money. I think if a player becomes available and they find a replacement, etc., in first, and then a player that it looks like a tricky deal. Suddenly, actually, there's a bit more legs to it. Then I think Spurs may act. The good news, I suppose, is that I could say with probably 99.9% confidence that Spurs will bring at least one, if not two, maybe even three players in before the end of the window. I would be stunned if there were, if it was only one more player coming in. But that's, I suppose, it's not really that good news, is it? Because we want to see someone in now, don't we?
Well, I'm expecting a handful, Josh. I don't know about you. I'm expecting a handful of players to come in. Before I go to the next question, Josh, earlier today, Sunday afternoon, Fabrizio Romano did give us a couple of updates. On Emerson Royal, he has stated AC Milan's current proposal for Emerson Royal is worth 15 million euros plus add-ons. Negotiations with Tottenham remain at final stages, working to get this done finally in the next couple of days. Spurs will start exploring new right-back options this week. Now, that's a question in itself, but before we go there, he has also stated on Pedro Neto, he remains a player that Spurs really appreciate and highly rate. For sure, he is one of the players that they have always had on their list. Let's see if they will decide to accelerate. I expect Tottenham to be busy starting from next week. So Fabrizio Romano is expecting Spurs to be busy next week. Now, let's go and talk about the right-back options first. Are you surprised by this news? Because, of course, you were on the podcast after the Bayern Munich game. We spoke a little bit about Jed Spence. I think Jed Spence has certainly impressed Ange Postecoglou. He's certainly impressed the Tottenham Hotspur fan base. And let's be fair, honest and frank about it. I think that a lot of us thought that we'd never, ever see him in a Spurs shirt again. But he has taken his opportunity, as have a lot of players in the summer so far in the pre-season games that we have played. Are you surprised that Spurs are exploring another right back?
No, I'm not surprised because, you know, you only have to look at what Ange Postecoglou had to say about Jed Spence to kind of see what the situation is. And, you know, from what he said, it is kind of, you know, everyone's been impressed by Jed Spence. I think fans, coaches, teammates, Ange himself. But ultimately, this is a two-way street. So he has impressed and he's done very well. And, you know, he's done enough, in my view, for me to warrant, you know, want to see him given an opportunity should the player want that. But then there's a conversation to be had, which is, you know, Pedro Porro is going to start week in, week out for Tottenham, you know, and what's Jed's ambition as a footballer? Is he happy? You know, he went over to Genoa and he was starting a lot there. You know, does he want to take up that challenge where he's going to have to work hard and he's going to have to bide his time again and, you know, play in some cup games here and there and hope that, you know, if there's an injury, he gets the opportunity to step forward? Or is he thinking, I've had a good pre-season, I'm getting to a point in my career now where I've been at a bit of a standstill. He made the jump up, you know, from Nottingham Forest on loan and then signing from Middlesbrough to Spurs. It didn't work out. Genoa, I think, is a bit of a backward step when we're comparing to Spurs, isn't it? So there's probably an element going through his mind, I'd imagine, where he's thinking, you know, do I just want to go out and play week in, week out, starting for a team? And I think that the way he's been playing in pre-season, that's certainly going to do his stock no harm. And if there were teams that were umming and ahhing about him, I think suddenly there might be a few more ears kind of open to listen to a move for him. And so I think that's where we're probably at now. And I think Spurs have to cover their backs. We don't want to be in a situation where, you know, after the Bayern Munich game at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, Spence has a meeting with Ange and says, you know, I just want to play week in, week out. I feel like this isn't for me, you know, and then Spurs are left with just Pedro Porro and, you know, that's not enough cover. So, and I know Archie Gray can slot in there, but I think, you know, if we want to start building, you know, we've got to have really two natural left backs and right backs. So yeah, I'm not entirely surprised, but I think this is one that I wouldn't be surprised if we didn't sign a right back and Spence does stay, but I think you've got to cover your back.
I said this a couple of days ago, Josh. I wouldn't be at all surprised if Jed Spence was sold, but I wouldn't be at all surprised if he stayed because it's about consistency and it's about him constantly doing it day in, day out, showing the right attitude and, of course, performing on the training pitch and, of course, grabbing that opportunity when he gets it. So that's going to be a very interesting situation. Philip writes here, a question for you, Josh. Do you think at 15 million, Emerson is worth more to us as an experienced backup across the back line?
I think it's a really interesting point, actually, because I looked at that transfer fee and I thought that doesn't quite seem right. You know, I know Emerson Royale is not, you know, he's no Pedro Porro. But I feel like he'd done enough and impressed enough, you know, particularly in some big games as well. Like, you know, I cast my mind back and I know people can say, oh, well, that's only one game. But, you know, when he stepped in at Anfield and we got a 1-1 draw, you know, in that Champions League run under Conte, and there's been other moments, you know, Man City away, you know, where in those moments, you know, he may make mistakes here and there, but he's shown up in a lot of big games for us. So I think what this comes down to is Ange Postecoglou and his system. Now, I don't really think that Emerson Royale suits Ange ball. And I think fundamentally that is the only thing at play here. This is probably nothing against Emerson as a person. I'm not saying he's a bad footballer, but I think look at Pedro Porro's characteristics, his ability on the ball, his ability into crossing, shooting. Emerson doesn't really have that. So he's far more of a sort of traditional right back, kind of a bit of a throwback where he's kind of more defensive minded first. And I think the other thing is, we have to take into account the market in the rest of Europe, because in the Premier League, everything's super inflated, and Premier League clubs, Bournemouth can go and spend more on a player than AC Milan can in many situations. So, I think in that scenario, we have to kind of take that into account. So 15 million is probably, doesn't look like a lot to us, but, that's a lot to a Serie A club. And I think ultimately, there's no point keeping a player there if the manager doesn't think it suits the system. And I'd rather take 15 million for him now than him sit on the bench or not get minutes and potentially go for less the following summer.
Josh, just very quickly, Pedro Neto, yes or no?
I would love Pedro Neto. Absolutely. And I can see with the colour of your shirt as well. Let's hope. Look, Pedro Neto is the type of winger that I think we desperately need. Someone that he's a bit of a sort of take on specialist. He's so quick on the ball. Yes, obviously there's the injury concerns. And with our record with injuries, it's not, I can understand why the club may think against it, but I think his quality far outweighs the potential risk. I seriously hope we get Neto. I think Neto is a game winner. He's a game changer. Get a striker in. Imagine having Son on the left, Neto on the right, and a top striker as well. I mean, suddenly that looks like a Tottenham front three. That's something that we've always, I suppose, associated with our football club. No matter where the club has been, we've always had, really, really top quality attacking line. And I think that Neto would go a long way to getting us into that situation again, where we actually can kick on. That's a signing that I think would change the whole dynamic of how we talk about transfers at Spurs.
Is that realistic in this summer transfer window, Josh? Because Gary O'Neill over the weekend has been talking out about Pedro Neto's situation and said that, if a huge offer comes in, and it has been widely reported that it's going to be between 50 and 60 million pounds, they would not stand in his way to leave the club for a big club. If Spurs, were genuinely interested, like Fabrizio Romano has stated, it would mean that we'd have to go out and spend big money. He's got great Premier League experience, a fantastic player, as you've said. His injury problems have been an issue whilst at Wolves. Of course, he featured at Euro 2024. But do you worry about the injury side of Pedro Neto's situation? And do you think that Spurs will go out and spend that type of money in this window?
I think it's a bit like saying, if you go into a car, there's a risk of crashing, and I know it's a lot more serious than that. And his injuries, I probably exaggerate there, but the point I'm getting at is I don't think you can spend your life worrying about injuries. I think you've got to look at the quality that the player has. And, I don't know what their facilities are like at Wolves. I don't know what their medical staff is like at Wolves. But what I do know is that Tottenham Hotspur has the best facilities in the country and some of the best facilities in the world. And if there's any, I don't think that's necessarily going to stop other teams going for those types of players. I mean, Jota had problems with injuries, went to Liverpool. He's had problems with injuries there, but his quality outweighs the negatives. In terms of the transfer fee, the thing that I would just point to is the fact that we're starting to see a lot of deals now where players get offered as part of deals, or you see, say Neto comes to Spurs for 55, 60 million pounds, and then as a separate transaction, a Tottenham player would go to Wolves for, say, 10, 15 million or whatever it is. So look at Winks and Maddison as well with Leicester last summer. So I think that's another factor in all of this, I guess, is that I think there's probably a few players that Wolves could potentially have interest in or would maybe be open to signing. So let's hope that Spurs, can maybe chuck that in if they're not going to spend the money up front. But I don't think that that's an impossible deal to do from a financial perspective at all.
Josh, a couple of comments from videos that I've posted in the last couple of days. So many thanks for all of these comments and questions. RJ67 writes, £65 million for Dominic Solanke. Paul, the other one. How much do you think Dominic Solanke is worth, and would you like to see him in a Spurs shirt?
I said this to you yesterday, but I'll repeat it again. For me, Solanke is a good striker, and I like what I've seen from him. He had a very good season, wasn't it? 19 goals last season. But there are probably 4 or 5 strikers I would put ahead of Dominic Solanke. It doesn't infuse me like some of the other signings. There's one man that I want more than anyone, which is Victor Gyökeres from Sporting Lisbon. And I know there's the whole, no Prem proven, etc. But he's English football proven. He played at Coventry, quite young. He was at Brighton before that, so it's not like he won't be used to how English football works. I think there are bigger risks, signing a La Liga striker, for example. Solanke at that price is just insane, in my view. Insane. I know part of the deal, I think Liverpool are bound to profit from any deal for Solanke, yeah. So that's going to be part of the reason why the fee or the release clause was bumped up to that degree. But also I think it's a case of, a club like Bournemouth have been run very well. They've got new ownership, or relatively new ownership, and clubs perhaps aren't having to sell if they run, by the book financially. They're not having to sell like they always used to. I think gone are the days of perhaps seeing a Southampton. I think Brighton has been the only example of that in real force, where it's like every year you expect one of the 2 of the big players to go. But even this summer, I'm not sure that's going to be the case. So I think now so-called smaller clubs are, wanting to maximise the inflated market and protect their assets. Not for me. For 65 million, that money could get you Victor Gyökeres if you probably chuck in getting rid of the sell-on clause for Marcus Edwards as well. I just think there's better players.
Josh, you're absolutely right about the Liverpool saga, because Liverpool would receive 20% of any sale for Dominic Solanke. And it has been reported that it would be £65 million as the release clause, and it would have to be paid in one lump sum rather than instalments because of that. Bill Foley, the Bournemouth owner, has come out and said that he expects Dominic Solanke to stay at the club for another season. But they do have a number of targets if he does leave. But then if he does leave, he has pretty much told clubs that they will have to pay the release clause and they will have to pay big for him. But they do expect him to stay. It's going to be an interesting situation, that. What I really wanted to ask is, do you think that Spurs will spend big in the next 26 days? Because Fabrizio Romano has stated that he expects us to be busy. I completely agree. I expect us to be busy, and I expect us to sign a handful of players, because when you look at this squad now, Pierre-Emile Højbjerg has gone out the door, very experienced player. Emerson Royale is about to go out the door, experienced player for us. And as the comments have already stated, he can play, or has played, along the back four. Whether people judge him or criticise his playing style and his ability, he has still been there for us, and he has still been a player that Ange Postecoglou has called upon on a number of occasions. Brian Hill, of course, has gone out the door. So on that front, Spurs have done a pretty decent job in getting players out of the door, but the next 26 days have to be about players coming through the door. And I have no doubt that players will come through the door. It's about what type of players they are and the quality of these players. And are you questioning at the moment what the plan was? Because I do also have a comment from ZZ Grom. It says, on the 10th of May, Tottenham boss Ange Postecoglou said the planning for the summer transfer window had been in hand for some time, and Spurs know what they need to do. So are you surprised at this stage, with 26 days to go, that we haven't got the targets, the so-called targets, in as yet?
No, because it's Tottenham. I think we're all accustomed to this. I think we will spend big, though. I think we're going to have to. It's sink or swim, really, at this stage in the window. And I'm really impressed with the business that Aston Villa have done. We've got to be finishing above them this season. Man United have also made a couple of serious signings in Xerxes and Lenny Yoro, who I know he's just got injured, but looks very talented. You know, I think also let's bear in mind that we've had the Euros and a lot of players have been away. You know, look at the number of players at Copa America and Euros that are yet to come back for Spurs. And that's why I think when Romano's talking about over the next few days, the next week, things might start, maybe that's an indicator of the type of player we're going for. It could well be players that were away with their countries and have been on holiday, players perhaps we've not been linked with yet, or players that the fans aren't talking about yet. I think there's all sorts of things, but when there's a major tournament, you know, I think there's always that chance that, you know, things can take a little bit longer. I mean, we were talking yesterday, Julian Alvarez is one that I would love. I don't know if he would ever come to Spurs, but he's one that's just been at the Olympics. After being at Copa America, he's had no time off. So if we wanted to get a deal like that done and he was available, which it looks like he is, you know, that's one that could go quite late. So yeah, I think Spurs will spend big. I think it's just about identifying the right player. And I know you can say, okay, well, Spurs should have known these players, but we've also got to remember that we don't own the players that we're after. And there's all manner of reasons why the clubs that we're trying to sign players off of are delaying things, stalling things. They've not identified their target, or a player that they were going for has got injured in pre-season. So that's means they have to go back to the drawing board. There's all sorts of things. I think it's very often very easy for us, you know, any football fan really, to say, why can't we act really quickly? Why can't we just get it done? Because often there's more factors than just Spurs saying, here's the money. The only case this is it is fair is a release clause. We know about Eze. We know about Solanke. You know, if you're that serious about the player and you're that convinced that they are the player to turn your club's fortunes around and turn us into a title-winning machine, then go out and pay the money. But there's obviously reasons why we're not doing that. So I think that probably indicates either we can try and do a cheaper deal for them, but that depends on all sorts of factors, or maybe we're moving on to other targets.
Josh, what did you make of Ange Postecoglou's comments in the last 48 hours? Because it's fair to say there were a lot of people feeling very optimistic, a few worried people about the timings of, you know, a lot of the signings haven't come in yet. But when Ange turned around and said, you know, we're not going to get it all done in this window, he didn't actually say the words, we are not signing anyone else in the next 20 odd days. He didn't come out and say that, but a lot of fans have taken it as such, you know, because a lot of fans out there at the moment are stating that, you know, we're not going to be signing anyone for the rest of the window. That is not the case. Ange Postecoglou did not say that, and it would be absolutely ridiculous if that did not happen. As we've both said, we expect signings to come in. But what do you make of his comments? Because surely he knows how the fan base is. He learned a lot about the fan base last season, you know, particularly about the Manchester City game and the Arsenal game. Are you surprised that he's put that worry into the fans?
Well, I think he's just being honest. I think I took it as we're not going to get everything done at once. I think there's this mindset. You know, I do it as well.
But did anyone expect that? Did anyone expect that in the first place?
Well, I think people sometimes do. I think sometimes people think you've had a positive first year and second year we're going to automatically become a title challenging team. Now, I know people all say, no, I don't think we're going to become a title challenging team. But when we're talking about the players that we want to sign, and when fans are saying this is what we've got to do, that is basically no one talks of, oh, we're gonna look to build a team that's going to get top 4 this time instead of top 5. And because that's just not how fans work. That's not how any of us work. We're always thinking, who can we sign? And do we think Tottenham are capable of buying and affording players that might join Spurs that can turn us into a team that can compete and win trophies straight away? We were told this was a project and it's going to take a long time. So clearly the conversation that Ange just had with Daniel Levy and co is you're going to get X, Y, and Z, but you're not going to get the full alphabet. And I think that's the difficulty. And the common denominator, and I hate to use the buzzword, is Levy. You know, we know what happens in a transfer window with Daniel Levy. There's always a but. There's always a, you know, and so, you know, we were told that this is going to be different. We all thought this window was going to be different. We all thought, because of the way that Ange has been backed so far, that this was going to continue, and we've not seen that pattern continue. And I think that's why yet. So that's why I think, you know, we're tetchy about it. But, you know, I think Ange is just saying, look, we're not going to sign everyone that you want us to sign this window. We're going to have a good crack, and we're going to still, you know, do our best to strengthen the squad. But don't expect Eze, Neto, Gyökeres all to come in at once, because it's just not going to happen.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think he's just tempering expectations.
Yeah. What are your expectations, Josh, for the next few weeks?
I think we'll sign 2, maybe 3 players. That's my honest thinking. I think we'll sign a striker, another attacking player, and then either a sort of more defensive-minded midfielder or backup fullback. But I don't think we'll get all 4. I would be surprised if we signed 4. I think my gut instinct is 3. This is not on knowledge. This is just, as a fan, my gut instinct is 3.
Josh, there's been a lot of comments in the last 24 hours or so, all about Ivan Toney, all about Dominic Solanke. There's one from Adrian Stone, actually, and it was regarding the podcast that you and I and a couple of others recorded yesterday. Cannot believe how much whinging there is on this podcast. It is only pre-season. Now, it's a funny one because I don't know about whinging. I think it was more concern because us as Spurs fans, we feel like we have seen various managers or head coaches before, you know, not get players that they have wanted to take Spurs to that next level. I've said on various podcasts and on various media interviews that I've done, you know, that since 2019, you know, I feel like we've gone round in circles somewhat with bringing in a couple of win now managers, a couple of other managers that clearly didn't work out. But it is about Ange Postecoglou taking us to that next level. And I also believe that the amount of times that Ange Postecoglou has said, and I keep repeating this, he's not interested in 5th, 4th, 3rd or 2nd. He wants to be number 1. When a manager or a head coach keeps coming out and saying the same thing, and when players like Romero, even James Maddison, whilst on tour, turned around and said, we can achieve big things next season, and all of the players are talking about trophies, all of the players are talking about success, and bringing that success to the football club, it's very hard, isn't it, that the fans are then not expecting big things in transfer windows.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to say with chest that I do whinge quite a lot about Tottenham because I cannot stand our chairman. I cannot stand the way that he operates when it comes to football. You know, it's one thing being a great businessman, and the stadium's fantastic. The deal is fantastic for that. The training ground's fantastic. But all of this was meant to be put in place to create a winning football club. And, you know, it's been a long time for a lot of Tottenham fans, you know, to see us win a trophy. I've seen one in my lifetime, and, you know, that's unfortunate because there are a lot of football fans. You know, I'm mates with an Oldham Athletic fan. Imagine how depressing that is. But, you know, at the same time, I'll speak to my dad and he remembers, you know, Tottenham as a cup team, a team that, you know, would always win an FA Cup or a, you know, and I think we're all feeling the same about that. But I think ultimately it's this feeling that we're always 1, 2, players short every time. And you just feel like, well, if Spurs had gone out and actually broke the bank and operated a little bit differently this one window, maybe the success on field would make the money back for itself, if that's what Daniel Levy's concerned about. Because that 1 or 2 players extra that we didn't sign every other window, especially now, let's face it, let's give them their fair dues. The people, behind the scenes, I mean, the recruitment's been brilliant in the last few seasons.
Yeah,
it really has. Since Paratici came to the club, it's been superb. Given that they're recruiting the right players, good players, sign that extra 1 or 2 players. We may be challenging. We may surprise ourselves. We may actually win the Europa League or an FA Cup.
Yeah.
And that's what matters. That's what football's all about. That's the only reason there's money in football and that there's sponsorships and fans go to the stadium. It's all because of glory. We don't even have that draped around the ground anymore. We used to have that at the old stadium, and that I think is what this all stems from, is just we want to, from a personal level, I'm fed up of being that Tottenham fan that everyone goes, oh, Tottenham, because I support Spurs. They're all Arsenal, Chelsea, whoever, Man United, Liverpool, but they've all seen their teams win stuff a lot more recently than we have. So, yeah, I'm happy to have a whinge or be concerned. I just want to see Tottenham operate a little bit differently, show the ambition us as fans and the players have.
I
leave.
As I say, Josh, I didn't consider it really as whinging. I think that all 4 of us were concerned about us moving forward and going up that next level, which, of course, we are always thinking about, going to that next level. And, Ange did a fairly decent job last season, I must say. And, he completely changed the mood at the club. And that was what was really needed. He did that straight away. And after 10 games, everyone was thinking, this is fantastic, with the mood and the mentality shift and everything like that. I just think he needs the tools now to take us to that next level again. Brian Daigle, who, of course, has been extremely critical of the way that the club has been run in recent years, he wrote the following on X today: I don't think that we have a clue or clear vision of what we want to be. What do you think the ambition is for this season? Because, of course, we know that Ange wants to be number 1. I think that any of us, Josh, what we do in our life, we always want to be number 1. How realistic, I suppose, is it that Ange can be number 1 at Tottenham Hotspur and we will see one day us win the Premier League?
Yeah, I think the players, Ange, fans all want the same thing, but ultimately the purse strings are, of the control of someone else. And it's not just about spending big money, right? It's about buying the right players. But it's rare that I stumble on a word. Accumulatively, there we go, got it out eventually. You might spend, say, 150, 200 million signing 8 players rather than signing 4 players worth, 50 million or whatever it is. But I think that's what we want to see. We just want to see a window where we're not left short and we're not thinking, oh, we're light in left back, we're light, in the 6th position, we're light on the wing. I'm not sure that Brennan Johnson and, Timo Werner are going to be our saviours on the wing, for example. That's not like my opinion. That's just like, things that people might say, and I think that's what it is. That's what this is all about. We want to see that, that ambition, but ultimately the ambition or the tone of the club is set by, the board. Look what happened at Arsenal when, Josh Kroenke was essentially given the reins, and Stan Kroenke, his dad, kind of moved away from it somewhat because, they had, I think it's the LA Rams, isn't it? They had a successful year and they put kind of their eggs in that basket there. The second that they kind of focused everything back on the football club,
Josh, this is
going well.
I was going to say, this is such an interesting question here. Design Town in Lou writes, who does Ange actually want? Because all of the fan base, including us, we're saying, well, why don't we go out and buy them? Why don't we go and buy them? Why don't we go and get them? Why don't we go and spend this money and just go and sign them? Who do you think Ange actually wants? Because, it has been widely reported. Ivan Toney, Eze, Solanke, all these names keep cropping up. Who do you think Ange actually wants? Because I wouldn't be at all surprised if in the next 3.5 weeks we have signings in that a lot of us haven't even heard of.
Yeah,
and I'm not saying that I'm not saying that's a negative thing either, because let's face it, a lot of people hadn't really heard or knew a lot about Vicario and Van der Ven. It is all about the scouting team going out and identifying them players, those right players that Ange wants in his system. Because yes, it is all well and good going out and signing big money players. And it's funny because on TalkSport earlier today, Tony Cascarino and Danny Kelly had a very, very interesting discussion about Spurs. All of the players that we've spent big money on, they haven't worked out. So
No.
I suppose there is that reluctance.
But I think it's also, if you look at those players, where are we buying those players from? And I think that, the players that we've spent big on, what have they actually achieved? Look at Richarlison. Richarlison, for all the years he's been in England, he's never been a 20-goal a season striker.
Yeah.
For that money, you'd expect 20 goal a season.
Yeah.
And Ndombele had essentially 1.5 good years at Lyon, of which before that he had all sorts of off-field troubles. Look at the players that we're spending the big money on when we do. It was all wrong. Even Brennan Johnson, and I actually quite like Brennan Johnson. I think he's got a lot of potential. I think he's a long way off yet. But even then, look at the money that we spent on him. What's he achieved so far? He's a talented youngster, but we're not buying ready-made players for big money. We're buying still fairly young or have a way to improve kind of players. In terms of what Ange wants, I couldn't tell you. I have no idea. I'd love to be a fly on the wall. I'd love to see his list if he has one. I wouldn't be surprised if we signed Kyogo Furuhashi, for example, from Celtic. I wouldn't be surprised at all if that's who Ange wants. And this is the other thing. I think it's, and I see comments a lot about this, which is, we all have our opinions and we all like to think that we're scouts and that we can see a good player or there's players that we like. But ultimately, we're always going to have our opinion on players that we're linked with. I'm not a huge fan of Solanke. Other people might be. But ultimately, it's who Ange wants, really. If we're really going to back him, it has to be who he wants. And if, no matter who comes into the club, even if we don't rate them, per se, another one that I'm not particularly a huge fan of is Santi Jimenez, the Feyenoord striker. I'm not entirely convinced by him, but if Ange says that's the man he wants, the second that they join the club, we've got to get behind them, I suppose. And we will do that anyway. We always tend to, but I think asking who does Ange want is an impossible question.
Josh, this same old question here from Leo. Is Eze going to Tottenham Hotspur?
I don't think we're going to spend 68 million thereabouts. That's the fee being reported. I can't see it. I would be stunned.
You were quite optimistic about us signing Eze earlier on in the window.
Yeah.
What's changed for you now?
I just think that if we're going to go for him, that needed to be agreed probably before the window even opened. He went out with England, didn't get a huge amount of minutes. Talk of Man City, who have been admirers of him for quite some time. I think Arsenal like him as well. Are Spurs going to spend £68 million or thereabouts on a player in a similar position to Maddison that will occupy those same. And I know he can play on the left, and but there's enough crossover there with Maddison where I think with that unsettled Maddison, is Spurs going to prioritise that position over, say, a striker or a winger? I would love Eze at Spurs, but I just don't think that we're going to spend the kind of money on Eze and then be able to spend money on the other positions that we need to fill, which for me are a greater priority. And I think we need a midfielder that can drive, and we need a midfielder that can, be a bit flash and take it to the opposition. But then I'm already seeing perhaps signs of that from Bergvall. And maybe that's what Bergvall was brought in to do. So I tend to agree.
Christopher writes here, going to break the bank on a number 9. 1 or 2 astute signings after that. Talking about money, how much money do you think is in the kitty at the moment for transfers in the next 3.5 weeks?
Whatever it is, it's going to be significantly under what we have available. I think that's probably, I could say that with some certainty. We seem to operate a 1 in, 1 out policy at Spurs quite a lot of the time. We know the financials. The financials are there for all to see. Spurs can spend an awful lot of money without falling foul of FFP. But, it's Daniel Levy. Daniel Levy decides what he wants to spend, what he doesn't want to spend. And I always get the sense that we have more money than the numbers being talked about and the rumours suggest. But I would suggest that we have probably in and around 120 million or so.
Josh, of course, Spurs played Bayern Munich at the weekend in our last pre-season friendly, and then, of course, the season starts away at Leicester. If Spurs don't sign a player this coming week, what do you think the atmosphere will be like at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium when Bayern Munich come? Because there's a lot of worried people at the moment, isn't there?
I don't know. Is it going to be a Harry Kane love fest? I think that's probably going to dominate things a little bit more. And I'd imagine actually it's going to be probably quite positive. The Shakhtar Donetsk game was a really lovely day out. It was a lovely game. I think a lot of us knew that it was going to be the last time we saw Harry Kane at the club. But I think, for all the negativity, we still want to see our team win, and we want to get behind the team, and we want to give them a good send-off before the season. So I expect, irrespective of transfers, it to be a positive atmosphere. And I think a lot of people, myself included, will be very excited to see Bergvall play at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium for the first time. Archie Gray as well. Yeah.
It needs to be a positive performance, though, doesn't it?
It does. And I expect a much better performance than we saw yesterday. But take away all the heat and the humidity that you have in monsoon season in South Korea, I think that probably goes a long way. Romero, I'd expect to get some minutes. Van de Ven.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see if Lo Celso gets any minutes. I think that would be an indicator of his future. It'd be interesting also to see if Bentancur gets minutes. And that, again, I think will be an interesting one in terms of his future. I think Spurs, if someone like Bentancur were to leave, then I think Spurs would go and get a midfielder for sure. We have to wait and see. I think it's going to be fairly positive, but I think, like a lot of times last season, that positivity and that bubble can burst very quickly if the football is poor.
Yeah. Josh, Roy writes here, offer Maddison to Crystal Palace as part of the deal for Eze. And John Neal has written here, Maddison is an issue, completely off the pace. So why not Kulusevski in the number 10? I've seen quite a few negative comments about James Maddison. Of course, when he signed last summer, I would say that he is a statement signing. I know some people hate that term, but when I mean statement signings, I mean, players that are going to, fit in that starting 11, play the majority of the games throughout the year, players that you look up to, players that other people look up to, players that you can rely on, players that are going to deliver week by week, month by month, hopefully year by year. But there has been a lot of criticism for James Maddison lately. I know he had his injury in that Chelsea game. Of course, after in those opening 10 games last season, it looked like one of the signings of the summer. But then, of course, he came back, didn't really reach the heights again of the opening 10 matches. What have you made of James Maddison in pre-season so far?
Well, he's been pretty poor, but I asked the question, is it really James Maddison that's the problem? Or is it the system? Is it the tactics? Is it the way he's being utilised? Because in those opening 10 games when he was electric and we thought, oh my goodness, what have we done here? We've got Van der Ven, who looks incredible, and we've got Maddison, who looks incredible.
Are you still questioning Ange's system, Josh?
Of course I'll question it. Why?
So you're not convinced?
I'm not unconvinced. I'm reserving judgment still because there's still some very obvious flaws to the system. When it works, it's absolutely brilliant. But when it doesn't work, it really doesn't work. And it's not like Pep's City where it works 99% of the time. It's a far more inconsistent. Look at the way we ended last season. I think, it's up in the air. I'm backing Ange all the way, and I want Ange to be really successful. But, the season hasn't started yet. Imagine if we start the season the way we finished the season, or vice versa. It could prove everyone wrong, and we could have an even better run than the opening 10 games. Look, Maddison, he's playing quite deep. He's playing sort of a lot on the left as well. I just want to see Maddison playing in the 10. I want to see Maddison playing behind the striker in advanced positions at the edge of the box, having shots, making stuff happen like he was doing, at the start of last season. But a lot of that was down to the fact that Sarr was playing really, really well. And I think he struggled a little bit in pre-season so far. And Basuma was on fire at the start of the season. Yeah. That midfield three was fantastic. And everyone seemed to be on form at the right time. So I think with Maddison, I'm not going to say he's a terrible player, and I'm not going to shoot him down. I think he deserves us giving him another chance and a chance to, turn things around and get back to the form where he was at. It's another conversation in January if he's continues this kind of run of form all the way through there. That's definitely a conversation. Eze for Maddison. Now, I love Eze, and there's a lot of things I would do to bring Eze to this football club. And I'd be lying if I said I hadn't thought about, could we offer James Maddison as a swap deal? I have thought about that.
I didn't expect that. I didn't expect those comments today. You've surprised me by you saying you've even thought about it.
I love Eze. I really, really love Eze. But that is pie in the sky stuff. That's FIFA career mode. It's not real. Spurs aren't going to offer James Maddison a year after spending that money on him in a swap deal for Eze. I would be genuinely gobsmacked if that happened. So it's not going to happen. And I would love to see a situation where maybe we could have both at the football club. But again, with this system, I struggle to see where they both fit into the same team. With the high and wide I can't even speak anymore. The high and wide wingers that Ange likes to play, the inverted fullbacks, they kind of invade that space that Maddison and Eze both like to take up. Maybe you have both of them in the midfield and you buy an absolute blockbuster of a 6 that, is going to sit really deep. I don't see it now, at least.
Josh, Stephen Boyd writes here, get Marcus Edwards back from Sporting. He will cost a lot less than Solanke. Would you like to see Marcus Edwards back at Tottenham?
Well, Marcus Edwards is a winger and Solanke is a striker, so I think it shouldn't be one or the other.
I think he was more talking about how much he was going to cost.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, I wonder what happens in that scenario. Do we? I don't know if we have a buyback clause for him, because I know that we've got obviously a sell-on clause. By virtue of that sell-on clause, does that make him whatever the price is? They whack a percentage of it off. Because this is the thing. Imagine if they say to us, "Oh, we want 100 million for Marcus Edwards," and we then get 35 million or whatever it is out of it. I mean, we're only going to profit more if we spend more on him. So it's a weird one. For me, no. It's nothing against Marcus Edwards, but I wonder why he's not been bought already. Because he's been playing well for Sporting for some time.
Yeah.
Why is he still there? Why did a Bournemouth or a Brighton or whoever, West Ham, go and try and sign him? So that's my only slight thing with it. And also, you know, where is he at in terms of his mentality, his attitude, all of these things? You know, could he come back to Spurs? Would he be a problem? I don't know. I've never met the guy. I don't know what's going on behind the scenes. It's a nice thought, but I think that if you're offering me the chance to sign Marcus Edwards or Neto, I mean, it's common sense, I think.
Josh, Charles Preston writes here. Yeah, Jonathan David, would you take him?
It's an opportunity buy, isn't it? He would be significantly cheaper than a Tony or a Solanke. I don't think he's a bad player. I actually think he's quite an exciting player. But for me, Jonathan David is where I would sign Jonathan David is if we sold Richarlison and we bought two strikers in, and we bought a number one striker, and David was brought in to be a backup to that striker. For me, David is not good enough in his own right to be the number one striker, and nor is Richarlison for me. So David would be a great third choice striker, but yeah, that stinks of opportunity. And if we can't get a priority target, maybe Ange wants that. If Ange wants Jonathan David and thinks he's going to, you know, pull up trees, then fair enough. He's quick, he's dynamic, but he's never really been an overly prolific striker. And I think that's what Spurs need to go out and get. Spurs need to go out and replace Harry. You can't replace Harry Kane, but go out and move on from Harry Kane. And if we're going to move on from Harry Kane, that involves going and getting a striker who is going to give you a significant portion of the sort of output that Kane gave us. I'm not expecting anyone to replicate his numbers, but for someone to be minimum, 20 goals in all competitions, pretty dynamic, suit the system, and for me, David is a nice to have, but I wouldn't go for him as a first choice.
Josh, I've heard many times, and I've spoke to many Celtic fans about Ange and his demands in transfer windows and him wanting to take the club forward and put trophies in the cabinet, etc., etc. And I've also heard a lot from Celtic fans saying, well, if Ange doesn't get what he wants and he doesn't get what he's promised and he's not happy, he'll then walk away from the job. What do you think he is feeling right now? Do you think that he is still expecting what he asked for and what he demanded at the end of last season? Because let's face it, we do have a big 3.5 weeks coming up. And I also mentioned this on the last podcast that you were on, about expectations and about where we are at the moment. If the season started and we didn't have any new signings in, then surely, yes, we have a decent squad, but surely we can't move any more above where we were in the league table. And also what I wanted to say is Ange Postecoglou has come out and said that the squad is stronger now than what it was last season, having lost Pierre-Emile Højbjerg and brought in Archie Gray, Lucas Bergvall. And he's also said that there has been a lot of growth in the current squad. Would you go along with that? Because personally, I disagree.
Yeah, I think there's an element of playing politics in the role, especially when you're in the spotlight as much as a Spurs manager is. I think Ange has his private thoughts, and I'm sure he is probably wanting things to be done a little bit quicker. But I think that comes out of common sense, right? Which manager wouldn't want their players in for the start of pre-season to embed them in, to get them playing the style? Which is why I mentioned Kyogo Furuhashi earlier. He switched agents in the last few days on the eve of the start of the Scottish Premiership season. He's a player that knows the Ange system. Ange knows. I wouldn't be surprised if someone like him came in as an opportunity buy if it gets too late. I just think, that I agree with you in terms of the growth. I'm yet to really see a huge amount. I think individually, for sure, and I'll give players some credit. I thought Bissouma looked very good for large parts of that second half yesterday. He looked a lot more like the Bissouma of old. I think he was carrying the ball really well, making productive forward passes, getting fouled quite a lot, which is good. In what's been, I think, a pretty difficult year for Bissouma on and off the pitch. Bergvall looks incredibly exciting, and we don't know how he's going to do, when he's playing Premier League football. But yeah, I think I wouldn't be surprised if Ange walks away if he doesn't get what he wants. And the thing that I keep seeing people say, everyone keeps saying, gone by Christmas, gone by Christmas.
There's a lot of that. Yeah,
there's a lot of it.
It's not only the fans though, Josh. It's a lot of the media. It's a lot of the pundits. It's a lot. It's a lot of people. Yeah.
Well, yeah, because I think fundamentally his style of football is so, for want of a better word, kamikaze. It is absolute craziness. His style of football. It's absolutely, it's stupid and stupidly brilliant at the same time. If you do not sign the right players to suit the system, then it's a car crash waiting to happen. So from that, but if you do sign the players, it can be an absolute masterstroke. So I think that Ange is going to keep his mouth shut a little bit now. I think he's going to walk the tightrope a little bit in terms of playing it safe. But also, I don't think Ange is an idiot. I think Ange knew the challenges of coming to Tottenham before he joined. Ange comes across, and I feel like you've met Ange before, haven't you, in person? You've spoken to him many times in press conferences. One thing that really strikes me is he's far, far, far more intelligent than I think a lot of people give him credit for. And he would have been fully aware of Daniel Levy. He would have been fully aware of how Tottenham operate. And I think that was part of the attraction of coming here, was he wanted that challenge, and he knew it wasn't going to be like Celtic where he gets everything he wants, because the culture is completely different and the league is completely different. So, yeah, I think all of the sort of sacked by Christmas is a bit of doom mongering, and I think it's a little bit dramatic.
Having said that, Josh, what I mentioned earlier, the conversation on TalkSport between Tony Cascarino and Danny Kelly, they discussed at length about Don Howe apparently said to Tony Cascarino, if your player of the season, your player of the year is your goalkeeper, then you have an issue. Danny Kelly then said, our five best players last season were the goalkeeper and the back four, Van der Ven, Romero, Udogie and Pedro Porro. I don't think a lot of people will disagree with that. They were quite concerned about the way that Ange sets up and the way that we set up in games, bearing in mind that our five best players were the four defenders and a goalkeeper. If you have, because I know there is this attitude with a lot of fans going, well, it's really entertaining football. If we concede 5, we'll score 6. But we don't have those offensive players to be putting the ball in the net like they should be. Because, you know, we've spoken at length before on various podcasts, including on Saturday, that Richarlison has been so wasteful, Timo Werner, Brennan Johnson. And, you know, I don't want to be getting on the backs of some of these players. But I suppose I'm going to go back to the transfer window again on how important it is to be signing options. Because if you are playing Richarlison in a game, I know we've seen Heung-min Son go through the middle, but I think that 99% of Spurs fans agree that he is more effective on the left. You know, you want to be seeing different options as well. And Spurs have always been a club with a number of options, pre-Harry Kane, I might add. But it's really important, isn't it? Those offensive players, and Ange Postecoglou so often in the last 12 months spoke about there is so much more growth in that final third.
Look, we can concede 5 goals a game happily if we're scoring 6. I can live with that, you know. But again, this comes down to Ange is.
But Tony Cascarino's point, Josh, that he felt like Spurs were really easy to play against. He felt like you know, he
play against because we've got a bunch of players that frankly aren't good enough or don't suit the system. Højbjerg, I think, is a magnificent footballer. A lot of people might disagree with that. I've seen enough of him down the years, especially look at how he plays for Denmark. Never seen him have a bad game in a Denmark shirt, for example. And you look at the clubs that like him and the clubs that are interested in him. And, you know, there's a reason why certain people rate Højbjerg, Pep Guardiola, for example. But he didn't suit the system. Where I'm at is Ange Postecoglou is one of, if not the most experienced manager in the Premier League in terms of years as a manager. He has won absolutely everywhere he's been. He knows a lot more about winning than anybody else at Tottenham Hotspur Football Club. That's a fact. Anyone that is currently employed, other than the legends that have won, you know, stuff down the years, Ange knows more about winning. He knows more about winning than us as fans. He knows more about winning than the players that haven't won stuff yet. Give him the tools that he needs and the players he's asking for to suit his system. He will do great things at this football club, I've no doubt, because every single place he's been, the same questions about the tactics, the same questions about the set pieces, this, that, and the other. I mean, he said it himself. I think he sort of laughed at a question about it because he said everywhere he's been, the same questions have been asked about him, the same concerns. Every single time he shut those people up, he's proven them wrong, and he's won silverware. You know, there were Celtic fans complaining about, I think it was them at set pieces and the goals that they were conceding in the first year. And then they were, you know, far, far better the second year. And I know it's the Premier League and people say, oh, this is not Scottish Premier League. I get all that. But look at our back four. We've got a good goalkeeper and we've got fantastic, you know, set of defenders. We've got Dragoshin as well. That's a 5th defender who's top quality as well. But think about, yes, I know Jose had won everywhere he'd been, but, you know, at the same time, we sacked him before a cup final. And Conte, again, Conte is a manager that you give him £200 million at the start of a window. Spurs have never operated like that. They're win now managers. You sign top quality experienced players now. That's not how Spurs have ever rolled. I think, unfortunately, we set them up to fail. And I'm deeply frustrated by that. But kind of back to Ange, I guess the reason why those players, the defensive players and the goalkeeper, are players of the season is how many times did Son give it away on the edge of the box? How many times did Maddison trip over his own feet? How many times did, you know, Brennan Johnson run down the touchline and the cross was poor and we got done on the counter-attack? A lot of the time that we got done, yes, there were set pieces and that is a problem. Yes, there were the unforced errors and Spurs have always struggled with that. But there are a lot of times where we're in good positions going forward and it's side to bloody side, left to right, left to right, left to right, going nowhere, not progressing. We allow teams, you know, and this is why Eze is such an important target for Spurs, and Neto as well. It gives you something different. We need players that can run at defenders, drag the low blocks out of position. The teams that set up really rigid, the only way you're going to create gaps is by running at them. And I think what happens is we go side to side, we give the ball away, we get done on the counter, and quite often it feels like we're relying on Romero to intercept something or Van de Ven to sprint like Usain Bolt and pull off a wonder tackle. I mean, it's absolutely bonkers. But I don't think that that's necessarily a fault of Ange Ball at its core, but it's the system looks more flawed because we've got players that simply are not capable or technically good enough to play that way. Buy in a Pedro Neto and Eze, or players that, Ange wants to suit that system. I don't think we'd be giving the ball away half as much.
Robert writes here that he thinks that I'm panicking a lot and, give it time because there's 3 weeks left. I'm not panicking at all. I will judge the window at the end of the window. I just hope that the football club do back Ange Postecoglou, as we have seen in the last couple of windows. Because I want to see the football club progress. It's all about ambition. It's all about progression. And that has to happen in this transfer window because, as Josh touched on it earlier, a number of clubs above us and below us have strengthened, will continue to strengthen in the next 3 weeks. And I hope that we, do more business and better business than some of our rivals. Josh, let me ask you, now the new season is only a couple of weeks away. Leicester City away, Everton at home, Newcastle away, Arsenal at home, Arsenal at home, Brentford at home, and then Manchester United away. Now, out of those opening 6 games, how are you feeling about those 6 games? How many points do you think Spurs should pick up? Because I'm going to ask this question because when I mentioned it to you yesterday, I think it was off air that we spoke about this. The opening 10 games of last season, we were unbeaten. We were sitting top. And many people had very low expectations. And when we were sitting top after 10 games, everyone was on a high. James Maddison was playing extremely well. Vicario, of course, new signing, was playing extremely well. Van de Ven, everyone was wowed by him. Basuma had a really good opening 10 games until that Luton game where he got sent off. Everything seemed to go so well. And it was like a party atmosphere at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. So what's the expectation for the opening couple of months for Spurs in their second season?
You're going to hate me for my answer, but it's not about the first 6 games. It's about the whole season, and it's about building a team that is far more consistent. What I mean is, it's extremely important, isn't it? Like a club like Spurs or teams that are going for top European spots to start the season well, perform well, and put the points on the table. I said in the first 10 games, Spurs need to be winning 7 of them if we want to be competitive. Because Arsenal will almost certainly win at least 8. Manchester City probably similar. Liverpool have looked very good in pre-season. I know it's just pre-season, but they, at the moment, I'm thinking that Liverpool may struggle. But from what I've watched of them in pre-season, and I've finished work late enough a few times to watch them, they've looked very good.
Yeah.
It's only getting more and more competitive. And let's not rule out Aston Villa. I know Aston Villa of Europe, they've got Champions League, but they managed the Conference League and Premier League pretty well last season. Aston Villa could go and have a brilliant start to the season again. You've got to be winning at least, you've got to be looking to win 7 out of the first 10 games as a minimum, I think. And that includes a win in the North London derby. That goes without saying. Not having us lose 3 North London derbies at home in a row, that would be really, really, really bad. But then look at the other games. I mean, it's Newcastle away, isn't it? After third up is Newcastle away, right?
Yeah.
Okay, good. We can take our 4-0, 5-0 defeat, quickly and move on with the rest of the season.
I thought you were being positive on this chat.
No, I'm joking. Obviously, it's a good opportunity to go and Arsenal and Newcastle are 2 great examples of teams where, we've lost against them. Let's go and prove that we are a different team now. I think, Leicester's a good first game to have. I think that's probably one of the kindest games that we could have, on paper at least, because of their financial struggles and what they've been capable of doing in the transfer window. Everton at home, again, another good opportunity. I feel like there's no easy games in the Premier League at all. But, I fully expect us to have a fairly good start. And I think that I'm not going to do points, because I think that we'll probably go and sign another 3 players. And
yeah, that's fair.
We're
going
to be totally different.
Yeah, that's extremely fair.
If it's the same team now, I'm worrying a little bit. But we signed 2 or 3 top players, and suddenly we might start thinking, can we go even better than just top 4?
That's why I don't want to come across as negative, worried, whatever you want to call it, because let's have a look at the window, review the window on the 30th of August, because you never know what's going to happen. Josh, on the playing style, again, Michelle writes here, the problem is Ange won't adapt. Now, when you think of how we ended the season with the goals that we were conceding, and you mentioned, I've mentioned about the TalkSport pundits saying about how good and impressive the defence were and the goalkeeper. These players were playing, and we were conceding a lot of goals from set pieces. Does that worry you going into Ange Postecoglou's second season at the club, or do you think that he has worked heavily on set pieces?
Well, I think that it's hard to work heavily on set pieces when
we've got no defenders there. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
But I mean, generally.
Yeah, I mean, I've thought a lot about this, and I get the whole Ange won't adapt. I've thought this so many times, but then I wonder if, he said it himself, hasn't he? He said that the first season was about embedding a style, a way of wanting to play. And he said that consistently. And what message does that send to the squad if he basically changes it up, that basically says, stuff this, you're not good enough to play my system? Because basically, Ange Ball, in my view at least, can be fantastic with the right group of top, technical players, or Ross County as your opponent. But I think that was what he was more concerned about, is the signs of progress, because I think Ange made it abundantly clear that a lot of players would be moving out of the club. A lot of players would be packing their bags, and a lot of players will be coming in over the next few years. Of course, I want to see him adapt, and I think 1 or 2 changes here and there. I mean, we spoke about this yesterday. The squad looks tailor-made for 3 at the back. When you've got Van der Ven, Dragoshin, and Romero, and then you've got players like Udogie and Porro who can be so productive going forward. It just looks tailor-made for that. But that's probably because of a sign of the fact that, yes, we've signed a few players, but we're still in that process of getting rid of Deadwood and, changing what was essentially still a Conte team into an Ange Postecoglou team. I know Conte's been gone a while now, but, we've still got a number of players, or had last season at least, a number of players who were Conte players. Emerson, Royal, Kulusevski, Højbjerg, these types of players that suits that system. Even Bentancur. I love Bentancur, but Bentancur's tailor-made for the Conte style of football. Is he going to be able to deal with Ange Ball given a full season of fitness? I think he's technically good enough, but Ange may think he's not dynamic or quick enough for what he wants in that role, as much as we all rate Bentancur a lot. I think that's probably why I want to cut him a bit of slack. I think this is the season, and a lot of people say to me, I'm talking just like mates here, when they say, what do you really think of Ange? And I always say, I'm reserving judgment until the end of next season, because I want to see him backed, and I want to see what he can do in the second season, because everywhere he's been, that second season has been a drastic improvement on the first season.
Josh, can you answer this quite quickly? We've got a lot of questions here. What is the definition of backing Ange Postecoglou in the next 3.5 weeks?
Strengthening in the positions he wants to strengthen with the players he wants.
John writes here, Dane over Richarlison if we still haven't got a striker. Vandal Ross writes here, there are no points for pre-season games. That's exactly what Ange Postecoglou said yesterday. Why is everyone so negative? Josh, is it negative? Are the fan base too negative?
It's a two-way street. The team has to give us reason to be positive. I agree. There is an element of getting caught up in the moment, but we don't live 2 years in the future. You know, we live in the present, and the present is that Tottenham have only signed essentially Archie Gray and Bergvall, which was a deal that was done in January. You know, we've not signed. Well, this is it. I think that there are some that, you know, it's a balance, and I think that everyone deals emotionally with it in very different ways. I'm quite emotional when it comes to things. I can get quite carried away at times because I just care so much about wanting to see us win and be a successful football club. But, you know, I think at the same time, but yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, going on X, that's very different to speaking to fans, you know, in the Coach and Horses, you know? So at the end of the day, it's because we've not made any statement signings. We've not really strengthened any of the positions we needed to strengthen yet at this moment in time. And we're conceding circus goals like the one that we conceded the opener against Bayern Munich still. And so it's coming across as, oh my God, here we go again. And I mean, they carved us open. This was a Bayern Munich team that wasn't even 60% at full strength, that were carving us open for fun. But then obviously you temper that with the fact that look who our back line was. How probably the best player defensively for us yesterday was Jed Spence playing left back. It says all you need to know. So, yeah, I think there's a mix of long-term frustration, trying to be realistic, but also living in the moment and just, you know, people want to see us be successful. So I have a bit of patience. That's it.
Yeah.
I have patience for people that are negative, because at the end of the day, if you pay the type of money that it costs to be a Tottenham season ticket holder or to follow Tottenham around the world like you do, Chris, you have every right to be negative.
I don't think I'm negative. I think I'm realistic. I think that when I look at the squad, you automatically think, right, where is this team going to be finishing? What can we compete for? And I think we need to do hell of a lot more to be in the position where Ange Postecoglou wants to be. Now, that is me being realistic, because when Ange comes out and says we want to be number one, it is not being negative by saying we haven't got enough in our squad. That is being realistic. When you look at that squad, that is not good enough to win the Premier League title that our manager is saying that he wants to compete for. So that is not negative. That is being absolutely 100% realistic.
I completely agree. That's exactly how I feel about it. And I think that, you know, it depends how you articulate it, really, and where you articulate it. But yes, I think that's probably where the majority of Spurs fans that are frustrated stand. But obviously there are certain, you know, voices that are louder than others on social media or on certain accounts, or, you know, where it's taken too far. But, you know, I think that is it, really. We just want to see our team win. That's all we care about.
Yeah, absolutely. Still as Jay, and thanks so much for all of your comments. I always see your name pop up, so thank you. He says here, I bet lots of us will be looking with more interest in our under-21s team now that we have seen a lot of them in pre-season. What I'm hoping is that they can come up to the big team together. That familiarity with each other is a real advantage, and there is so much talent there. Josh, of course, we've spoken at length about the under-21s since you've been coming on the podcast in the last couple of years. What have you made of the under-21 players during pre-season? Because there is, you know, we talk about negativity. There is so much positivity with the youngsters. And I think that a lot of people have been on a real high with, you know, the amount of opportunities that a number of these players have taken during pre-season. And it's great to see so many of those development players on the plane going to Japan and South Korea.
I feel quite proud, actually. Because, you know, we lost possibly, there's certainly an argument for the greatest player our football club has ever seen to Bayern Munich, one of our own. And I don't want to get carried away in saying it, but I'm going to say it anyway, and I really hope I don't jinx it. There's a certain 16-year-old who you just see that sort of twinkle in his eye when he steps onto the pitch. There's just that, you can't help but think, could he be the successor? Could he be the one that we talk about in years to come? I'm deliberately trying to tread carefully with what I'm saying there, but, you know, then you've also got the likes of Jamie Donnelly, who said in his diary room with Will Lancashire that his proudest moment is wearing the first team, you know, Tottenham shirt, playing for his club.
Yeah.
We know the talent that Dorrington possesses, and I'm sure he would have been fantastic. He certainly would have been starting in this tour had he not had that injury in the surgery, because he's been superb last year. And Lancashire, I think Lancashire is very raw. In many ways, I think actually Lancashire probably has the most to improve on. But he's got all the tools, and I think he just needs the right direction and, you know, some good loans. And I think that he really has a lot of potential too. Even Abbott, when he came on, there's other players, you know, that we had, I think Craig made an appearance against Leeds, didn't he? The end of when in Mora's last game and one of Harry Kane's last game. So, you know, we've got lots of talented players. Tyrese Hall as well looks incredibly raw, but there's something there in terms of his technical ability that you just think, yes. Luca Gunter, I think, goes under the radar. He's a very talented goalkeeper. So, yeah, I mean, it's very exciting times. I mean, they're champions for a reason. And to be fair, the only time they really got destroyed was against Fulham in that game that we both went to at Craven Cottage, off the back of having gone all the way to penalties against Liverpool. They just looked shattered. So I think from that perspective, it's incredibly exciting, but not just exciting because they're talented players, but exciting because they fit into the Ange Postecoglou style of football so well, which is a sign that is now going down the football club. And that, I think, is really exciting. There's a reason why all those kids at Liverpool have done so well, and it's because Klopp was, you know, brought in. He was the man, and they wanted everyone at the football club, top to bottom, to play the way that the first team did, and it radiate down. And there's been a lot of talk about Tottenham struggling with identity, but I think that is the direction that they're going with. They are backing Ange in that respect, because all those youngsters, Jamie Donnelly was playing as a striker at one point, then an attacking midfielder, now left back, and doing it pretty, you know, accomplished as well. So it shows that they are being, you know, trained in a certain way. Yeah, the comment that you've got there is it. And for all the negativity and all of the concern that you can have about things at the club, that's one thing that actually always puts a smile on my face, is seeing these kids do well. You know, watching them as well, as it's been a lot easier to watch them on Spurs play and, you know, at the games as well. And we've got really, really talented bunch of players, really talented. Now it's about managing them right, giving them the right loans. You know what, we're talking about some of those younger players, but we forget about, you know, Alfie Devine. I think from what I heard, Alfie Devine struggled a little bit at Plymouth. when he made the step up after doing really well at Port Vale. But he looked very good yesterday against Bayern. So, you know, they're not the solution right now, but it's good to know that we've got, you know, maybe one, maybe two that may come through this season, maybe another one or two next season. You know, I would be very surprised if Mikey Moore didn't play this season a fair bit.
Yeah, same.
I feel like he's going to get minutes, and I think he's going to get goals for us as well.
Yeah, he's done very, very well. James Fox writes, our squad is not strong enough. Paul Clark says, squad is stronger. How? Marcus Bear says, stop moaning, wait until the window closes. Ange Postecoglou even said they are still in for their top targets. And Ron Shazbut says, I hate the term statement signing. The last signing that we made that was a statement signing was Tanguy Ndombele. What a disaster that was. I suppose it goes back to my point, Josh, that I made earlier about are Spurs reluctant to go out and spend big because the handful of big signings that we've had, they haven't been so successful at the club, have they?
Well, Daniel Levy shouldn't have appointed numpties to deal with that. And I'm talking about Hitchin. You know, you've got Paratici that was brought in.
But everyone wanted Tanguy Ndombele. Every fan wanted Tanguy Ndombele in, and even with Ryan Sessegnon leaving, I know it wasn't that much money, but even at that point, everyone wanted Ryan Sessegnon in. And then, of course, when he gets injured, everyone slags him off, and of course, then he's had to put on social media, you know, careful what you write.
It's easy to watch a one-off game in the Champions League and a YouTube compilation and think, yeah. You know, I think everyone's done it. Everyone's watched a YouTube compilation and think, oh, he looks class. I mean, they tend to make players look class in these compilations, but ultimately, right, the people that were doing the business, you know, none of the signings worked. So we can point to, oh, Tanguy Ndombele didn't work. Oh, Lo Celso's not really worked. You know, but look at the other players that we were signing. Bloody George, Kevin and Kudu, Clinton and G. Benjamin Stambouli. I mean, these are some of the players that came in that time. So let's be real. While we can judge the big signings that were messed up, the cheaper signings were also messed up. What I'm looking at is look at the signings that we've made in the last couple of, well, since Paratici came to the club, basically, the level has been so much better.
Yeah.
So that's where, if we're going to go and spend big, I have faith that we're going to get it right, because look at the people who have been making these decisions. They've been getting it right time and time again. That's where I stand on it. So in a weird way, I'm choosing to be positive at that. But equally,
there are some, I'll say some, there are a fair amount of very positive fans out there stating that this is the chance for the youngsters to shine if we don't do business in the transfer windows. I get all of that, Josh, completely. And I'm all for one for giving the development players the time. What I don't want to see myself is them having the huge pressure on their shoulders that they have to deliver week in, week out. And that's why I say that it has to be that fine mix in the transfer window. Yes, give the development players the opportunities, absolutely fantastic. But there's got to be that fine balance of having those experienced players coming in where Spurs do go out and identify the players that Ange Postecoglou needs.
I mean, what would happen if Mikey Moore played a consistent run of games and didn't score in any of them? That's my fear, is how would people react to that? So, but do you know what? There's a comment there just come through, Vandal_Ross. Kane was young once. He didn't do too bad. And I love that because, you know, what it took was Tim Sherwood just giving him that opportunity. And he took it. And I think if they're good enough, they will take the chance and they will run with it. But for me, it should be a case of we shouldn't be relying on, you know, youth if we don't make signings. We should be making signings, and then in the games that we do give Mikey Moore a chance, or Lancashire or Donnelly, they shine in those games. With a better group of players, I would much rather see Mikey Moore and Jamie Donnelly both start a game for Spurs in the Cup, knowing that the players around them are of a top quality, than us being stuck. And I don't mean this as a dig to Oliver Skipp and Ben Davis, but just two examples of players that, you know, as much as I'm fond of them, I just don't think they're of the level that we want to see at the football club going forward. You know, if Donnelly's playing next to Skipp and Davis as a back line, you know, that's how I feel about it. I think we give them a better chance of succeeding if we don't set them up to fail with poor players around them.
Josh Charles writes here, Chris, what do you think about the definition troll? Anyone who doesn't support our manager. Do you know what? With trolls, I've said this before. I probably, I don't think there's any probably about it. I actually block more people than I follow on social media. I have a zero tolerance policy. As soon as someone is personal about me and they make it very clear that they don't like what I do, then, you know, move on. Block, hit that block button, and that's it. I go my direction, they go theirs. No hard feelings. That's the way it is. Josh, is there anything that we haven't covered in this episode that you'd like to discuss? Because we could literally be here all night. And I want to thank all of the viewers this evening on YouTube, on X and on Facebook, because we've had 2,500 people watching throughout the whole of this stream. So thank you so much for that. But is there anything that we haven't covered that you'd like to talk about?
I think the only thing that I keep thinking about, and I don't want to keep people too long, but is Son and the Son situation, his long-term successor. Do we manage his minutes, his productivity? We had a conversation off air. You know, I think it was yesterday, in fact, wasn't it? Before the Bayern game or during the first half, where we both kind of agreed that it felt like he'd lost a yard of pace, and his touch probably isn't as good as it once was. It's not to say he's not a fantastic player. He's still, of course, a fantastic player and still an amazing finisher. I saw someone mention way up in the comments, I think you'd struggle to find it now, but about managing his minutes. And I think that's how I feel about it. And I wanted to ask you, Chris, how you feel about Son, that situation, and what we need to do with him next season, because I feel like he will probably be one of, if not our most productive player next season, unless we buy a top striker. He's given so much for the club, but I think now, I think he even said it, didn't he? And when we signed that Hyuk, and maybe Hyuk is the answer. He is the long-term successor for Son, but he said he's feeling old now, and that's true. I mean, he is starting to get on a little bit for that position. I just wanted to get your thoughts on Sonny and what we need to do with him next season.
I do not want to see Son through the middle this season. That is one thing, Josh, because I feel like there is an awful lot of pressure on Son when he plays through the middle. He has delivered so often on that left-hand side. I think he has been an excellent captain. If there is anyone that I would love to see lift a trophy at our football club, it is him. I've said so often, the amount of great players that have played for this football club, certainly in the past 16 years since our last trophy, that have come to the club, played for the club, left the club without winning anything. I'd love to see Sonny lift a trophy. But yes, I do think he has lost a yard of pace, but I think there is still so much more to come from him. I think he's an excellent leader, and I think he's great for those young players in the dressing room, both on and off the pitch. But I do want to see a centre forward signed in this transfer window, so Heung-min Son can constantly play on the left-hand side and be the vital player that we know he can be, and he has been, in the last X amount of years that he's been at the football club. I do think there is a lot more to come from him. And I just hope we are successful with him as the captain, because, as I say, there's nothing more that would make me put a big smile on my face by seeing him lift a trophy.
I completely agree. I think we need to manage his minutes, though, now that we've got Europa League. And the way I feel about it, the only team that is there to potentially stop Tottenham from winning the Europa League is Manchester United. And that's going to involve us having to play a pretty strong team throughout that competition. I think it's no secret that he has lost a yard of pace, and he's not perhaps exactly how he was as a younger player, but that's natural. His game has changed. I also think his intelligence and his leadership is fantastic. The way he reads the game is brilliant. And, he shows he can still finish. He's still productive. He'll still score loads of goals. I just think that what I hope to see is that it's no harm in benching Son for certain games. And it's no harm in bringing Son off after 60 minutes if it's not working. And I think that's my only concern with Sonny is he has been near enough Mr. Perfect for us for so many years that I almost want to see him treated a little bit more human by Ange and by everyone. And I guess, I feel like we need to try and figure out a way of playing without him as well as with him. Because then I think we're going to get a lot more out of him, because I think there'll be certain games where he has played a lot of minutes. You bench him, you bring him on after 65 minutes and he goes and scores 2 or 3 goals like he did. Was it Leicester 6-3?
Yeah.
And he came on and scored a hat-trick off the bench. And it's that. I see him having that kind of impact the older he gets as well. I think that I'm with you completely. I would love to see Son lift a trophy. There's only one person I want to see lift a trophy more than Son at Spurs, and that's Harry Kane. But preferably, as the picture behind you, they can both do it together one day. Even better, Son can lift one against Bayern Munich whilst Harry Kane is crying in the other half. But I think that we need 2 attacking players to be able to rest Son. And that's
whatever happens. Whatever happens. I was going to say, Josh, whatever happens next weekend with the Malta Cup, whether Spurs are lifting the trophy, we're going to get bantered. And when Harry Kane, or if Harry Kane lifts the trophy at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, he is going to get a lot of banter as well. So we can't win on that occasion, can we?
It's just, But ultimately, I think it makes it more fun. Though I kind of like the fact that that's all at stake. It's kind of shades of the Tiger Cup last year, but with a bit more prestige. Yeah, this is kind of Audi Cup vibes, isn't it?
Well, as I've said, there is 26 days left of the transfer window. We'll be doing a lot more of these shows. So I cannot thank everyone enough for all of your comments, all of your questions for tonight's stream, and of course the past ones that we have done. These shows have been extremely popular. So thank you so much for all of your input. We're just under 121,000 subscribers on YouTube as well, which is absolutely incredible. So thank you so much to everyone who subscribes and has a real input in the channel. Josh, thank you so much for joining me this evening. I know when we get talking about Spurs, we could literally talk all night. I know that we have been governed today by all of the questions and comments by the viewers, but they've done a great job, questioning you as a journalist and questioning you as a Spurs fan. But let's hope that we are all smiling at the end of the transfer window on the 30th of August. Josh, thank you so much. Where can people find you on social media, and what are you up to at the moment?
Just working, covering the Olympics, and getting ready for the new season. I've booked off some well-earned rest during transfer deadline day time, so you may see me again at some point on deadline day, hopefully with a lot more positivity. But yeah, I'm at Josh Hughes TV on X. Don't tweet as much as I used to, probably because I spend so much time on social media for my work. So, but I will try and tweet a little bit more Spurs stuff soon. But thanks
Do
once
you-
again for having me on.
Do you block many people on social media?
I don't get as much attention as you. I'm not a Spurs fan. Don't have 100,000 followers. I've got about 3,000.
You will after this stream.
I've blocked a few people, but to be honest, I know it's part and parcel. Even if I didn't support Spurs, it's being a journo. You're going to get stuff all the time. I tend to just laugh at it.
Well, Josh, thank you so much for being a great guest as per normal, and hopefully we'll have you back on the channel very, very soon. As I say, thanks for watching, everyone. Thanks for listening. And remember that all of these podcasts are available on all major audio platforms. We'll be back again very soon. Until the next one, come on, you Spurs.